Welcome to the Leading with Empathy podcast. My guest today is Yvonne Kelly from Glow Up Careers. Now, this is a wonderful conversation. Yvonne is a very passionate supporter and driver of helping refugees and migrants to gain employment. This is an area that's so big because there are so many incredibly talented, professional, incredible people from other countries who've, through no fault of their own, many times have had to flee to Australia, and they find it challenging to get the roles that are going to help them move forward. And Yvonne has built a really powerful way to help support those people to move into, yeah, gainful employment and get the career that they deserve, and also to help change the minds of organizations and business leaders to really think differently about bringing this talent in. It's a fascinating conversation. I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. So please enjoy this episode with Yvonne Kelly. Hello, Yvonne. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So wonderful to have you on the podcast. I'm really excited about the work you do and the amazing sort of impact you've had. Maybe to start with, just tell us a little bit about what you do and I guess how you came to do what you do today.
Yeah, so I am Irish from Dublin and came to Australia a week after I graduated from uni and I studied HR. So I came as a backpacker. I was really lucky. I landed a job very quickly when I got to Sydney in recruitment, and my whole career has been working in recruitment, helping people find jobs. And yeah, about just over 5 years ago, started to see a change in technology in the hiring and application process, and started to see candidates coming. I was running my own recruitment agency with my husband at the time, and we started to see people that were really struggling with the rise in technology and how to be visible in the job market, kind of interaction with AI and technology. So I decided to develop a career coaching program that would help guide people and really just give them the confidence. I think looking at from when I started in recruitment to now, we used to just place a job ad in the newspaper, people would apply. As recruiters, we talk to everyone. Now hundreds of resumes. It's so easy to make an application, and very few people get contacted. So it's, really looking at that visibility, but also getting people to really think about what's important to them, and to just stop and reflect and say, what are my strengths? What are my values? What are my passions? And mapping out that meaningful kind of career pathway. So that was kind of how I started to do what I'm doing now, is building that career coaching program. And I went to an event, which was a career event actually, and I had just started to trial the coaching program with a number of people. And at that event, I met a refugee called Arash, and he was the first refugee I'd really ever met. And we started to chat, and he was finishing uni, and he said, "Oh, I don't really know how to get a job in Australia." And I said to him, I said, "Look, I've developed this coaching program. I'd love to put you through it." And so I did, and we've continued to have a great coaching relationship all these years later. And yeah, that was kind of just a spark for me. Our coaching program started to get a lot of really good results. So started to see people really doing that self-reflection work, having that empathy for themselves, and really thinking about what was important to them, and in their life and in their career. And then I think when people have a bit of a plan, and you kind of just guide them, nudge them in the right direction, it was amazing to see with that confidence what they could achieve. So we launched, Alex, my husband, and myself launched Glow Up Careers on World Refugee Day 5 years ago. And we felt that our coaching program was too good not to share. So we set up an accreditation that we could bring coaches. So we've now got over 200 coaches that that have an accreditation in our programs. And in the last 5 years, we've supported 1,600 refugees and migrants with coaching.
Oh, that's amazing. And look, I'm really interested. There's so much I want to talk about it and sort of dive into. And we can go back to the coaching program a bit. You spoke about the importance Are people understanding themselves? Are people doing that sort of reflective work? I guess there's so much to talk about here, but what are some of the blockers, do you think, that are causing people to not even think about this? I mean, it seems like it should be intuitive, but there's something missing there sometimes. What are
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. So I just think that so many people get into a career and it just that it just kind of takes them in a direction. And often they don't tend to stop and reflect unless they have to. And we do a lot of career transition and outplacement work as well. And sometimes it is either a life-changing event or it could be a redundancy that makes them stop and think, is this really what I should be doing? I know that for a lot of people, COVID did that. You know, when they did, they were forced to stop. It was like, wow, okay, is this really, do I really want to be traveling? Or do I really want to be living here? Where do I want to be spending my time? And we see a lot of individuals also, trying to find purpose in their life. So, does their life really have meaning and purpose? And I think the lines are more blurred between, I think in the past, a lot of people had a work life and a personal life. And we've realized that we can merge both, and it is okay to follow your passions and do something. Like I just love hearing stories. I have this amazing lady that I met, and she's an opera singer, but she's also a psychologist. And so, anything's really possible if you really kind of stop to think about it and put a plan. And, a big part of that is around, yeah, having that kind of goal, but finding the right people to support you on it and that networking piece.
'Cause there's sort of a dual problem that not that long ago in history, the number of different career choices was pretty limited.
Yeah.
The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, that sort of there were some pretty finite areas you could go into, and that in just the last 20 years has exploded in volume. But at the same time, people are sort of overwhelmed with, I don't know what I want to do. And so what are some of the things, without giving away everything, that you sort of, what are some of the questions, I guess, people can ask themselves to start to try and uncover what are those underlying, values, purpose, meaning, passion, those things that sit inside them?
Yeah, so we do some work with high school kids, and it's really interesting because they're obviously just at the very start of their careers. They're trying to explore, and as you said, there's so many different options, and often if their parents are trying to guide them, like a lot of parents don't even know what type of roles, if it's not been in the realm of their world of what they've known. So for me, strengths is really a good place to start, like really to think about, what are your strengths and what are you good at? Because it's much easier to do a role that, yeah, you're good at, but you've got to enjoy it too. So, my daughter's really good at art, but she says to me, "Oh, I don't love doing it." So it's trying to combine, that kind of, yeah, the strengths, the passions, but also then aligning that with your values, like what's really important to you, what's important to you as an individual, but what's important to you as a family. How can you design a life that you want to live out, and how can that include, supporting others as part of what you do. So for me, that kind of whole picture of, yes, starting with self, but then looking at that purpose piece is super important. So I think it's just actually just stopping and doing some of those self-reflection tasks, and then I think it is so helpful to work with somebody else, whether that be a mentor or a coach or someone that can help guide you towards the answer for yourself. So we're very much about empowering people to find that path rather than telling them what they should do. And often that's an exploration. So being curious and really just throwing all kind of other perceptions out and thinking, just let's just, take some breaths and ground ourselves and think about, for me and for what, my life. And I've been having a few conversations recently around legacy. So what is a legacy that, that you want to leave behind, and what do you want to leave on this earth? And yeah, so And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last 5 years is that as an individual, you do have a chance. You can make a big difference. So what do you want that to be where you can have fun and joy and but also that it connects in with your family too. So things that you can do with kids or yeah.
Yeah, do you ever find you get people who say, that all sounds nice, but I just really need to get something. I really need a job. I
Yeah.
just have that sort of almost desperation for action, and therefore they don't want to take the steps. Does that come up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do this part of our program is looking at this short, medium, and long term. So coming up with a career dream or career goal, and we usually suggest three. So more than that, it's a bit kind of hard to manage. So we usually say, let's look at maybe what you've currently be doing. You know, what would that look like if you were to continue? What are the maybe it's promotion or continuing in that line of work. But then we look at what are the skills and strengths and experience that you've got that are transferable to something else. So I remember I was coaching somebody who was like in data analytics, but when we started to do the self-reflection work, he said, actually, something that I've always dreamed of doing is to be a paramedic. So we were able to explore, well, what would that look like? You know, what study does that involve? He hadn't ever spoken to a paramedic, so that was pretty important to say, what are you going to be doing every day in that role? And financially, what's that going to look like for for him and his family and timing and all of that. So it's really looking at, you know, where you are now and also then, yeah, where you want to get to and what are the steps that it's going to take. So often we all have to earn an income and have money coming in. So how can you do that, but also pursue something that you're super passionate about? So, and I think having these dual careers is also very possible now. Like a lot of people have, you know, two or three things that they can do at the same time, and they can do that really successfully. And it's just about setting out that intention of and I do find if they've got kind of a goal and a dream that they're aiming towards, then it's much easier to map out that career pathway.
I think that's really good to have that holistic sort of perspective. I remember early in my career, a wonderful gentleman who was very senior at the bank I was working at said to me, "Only worry about no, don't worry about the next job. Worry about the job that's going to lead you to, and worry about who your boss will be,
Yeah.
because those two things are going to determine whether you're going to have that success in the long term. And that holistic view of what are you passionate about, what are you good at, what financially will that look like? Is that going to sustain the lifestyle? There's a whole bunch of factors I think are really important. I want to maybe dive into the transition or sort of evolution into the refugee and migrant sort of space, because you know, we live in a country here where, like you, we have a rich culture of migrants, and it's probably the most beautiful thing about Australia. But that doesn't always mean it's easy for certain migrants. What are some of the, I guess, the challenges you find that are unique for someone with a particular type of background when they're looking to get into the job market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of keynote speaking, and I'm very lucky that I speak on stage with Yasser Nasseri, who's a former refugee, and I share my very privileged migrant story of flying to Australia and yeah, getting a job quite quickly and settling in and speaking English. Yasser, yeah, has a much more harrowing story as a refugee, having fled Iran, and I think when people can see that, you know, there's so many different types of migrants and different ways that migrants have come to Australia. One of the barriers definitely is language. So if English is a second language, that is probably the biggest challenge is to get kind of that intensive English language because it is very hard to find employment without speaking English here. So that's the first thing. And there's an amazing organizations out there that support refugees and migrants when they come here to get the language. Probably one of the second barriers is, especially for skilled refugees and migrants, is qualifications not being recognized. So especially for doctors. I've been having some conversations this week around supporting doctors and lawyers, and we were working and supporting some Afghan evacuees and a couple who were both judges. So it's very hard to go from being a judge in Afghanistan to be a judge in Australia. So there's some of those kind of systemic barriers that are just going to, yeah, take some time, and obviously it differs from industry to industry, so that can be challenging. And probably the next biggest thing is networks. So with the rise in technology, also we saw the rise in people finding jobs through who they know. So Australia is very much about who you know, and especially in industry sectors and referral programs. And yeah, they all kind of are all about referring people that are probably more like you. So refugees and migrants find that really difficult in relation to just not having that base network. So yeah, they're and probably confidence. Culturally, a lot of the refugees and migrants are the most beautiful and humble individuals, and it's often not in their nature to self-promote, and it's not in their culture. So it's quite difficult for them to put themselves forward, and as a result, we do find that a lot of refugees and migrants unfortunately get stuck in very menial and entry-level roles, and that's something that at Glow Up we advocate for hugely, is looking at the individual's potential and having coaches and mentors within organizations that can help lift that person through and really help them reach their potential.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical thing that, you know, when we talk about empathy, we talk about understanding people. Our natural instinct is to use our own mental models or assumptions to judge other people's behavior. So if one person sort of you know, I use a model to say, oh, they're hungry for this job and they're really, you know, they're pushing for it and they're passionate about it. And then I see another person and they're not talking about it, they're not promoting. I might see, oh, they don't have the desire for the job, or they're not as hungry. But that's really based on my interpretation of their behaviors, not of the facts behind the behaviors. So I guess from an employer perspective, what would you encourage employers to start to think about more or do differently to try and make sure they're getting the best out of this rich talent pool?
Yeah, so it is a massively rich talent pool, I'll tell you that. Like there's so much potential in this talent pool. And yeah, we call it unseen potential. Like it's just really untapped. So that's really the work that we've been doing at Glow Up, is to really harness that talent. So we've launched a diversity job board where we're highlighting that talent, and organizations can advertise all of the roles to commit to hiring diversity, not just with refugees and migrants, but across all diverse areas. And for me, it's trying to get companies to move to action. So not just talking about, oh, we really need to focus on this. I think the gender equality and WGEA reporting is starting to push companies to need to act. And a lot of the conversations I'm having with organizations is, you know, don't just look at the gender, but that intersectionality of there's refugee women, there's migrants, you know, and neurodiverse, all the different groups. So I think just making that commitment to, let's just start with one job. So let's just and reach out and connect with communities. So our job board, we've made it very proactive. So we're actually sharing some of those jobs where they've got a really inclusive hiring manager, or the role is accessible, there's a career pathway to progression, and we can share those job ads into the community where that talent is sitting. And at the same time, we're coaching refugees and migrants to give them that confidence and empower them to know what kind of the path is. And once they get it, like they just shoot to the moon. Like we've got some amazing stories of how when that potential is harnessed. So I think a lot of it is just we find that hiring manager bias. Some of it is in the hiring process itself, so the tech. So one example I give is a drop-down menu where it says, are you a permanent resident? Yes or no. If you're a refugee, you might have full work rights, or a migrant, you might be on a bridging visa, but you can fully work. Um, you're opted out. So you just go into a big black hole if you tick no for that answer. So it's just these simple things that are part of the process to really consider. You know, where you're looking for talent, because I think a lot of organizations just advertise in the same place, and or they rely on the referral program, and then they're getting the same type of people as the staff that they currently have. So really embracing difference is a big one. And you know, as I said, 5 years ago, I hadn't met a refugee, and it was, yeah, you know, I was just really curious then. And I've got so many friends now who come from refugee and migrant backgrounds and different backgrounds, and it's just that curiosity to learn. And also I think, yeah, just putting those, trying to identify some of those biases as an employer and put those aside and tap into the lived experience talent that you already have in your organization that you might not know are there. So we have a program for leaders, which is our coach accreditation program, that we get leaders and they can volunteer to do the coaching with refugees and migrants. And often they, you know, the individuals that are passionate, maybe their parents had come as refugees, or yeah, they were migrants themselves. You know, there's a real kind of innate. We get a lot of individuals who, quite a few of our coaches are LGBT or and neurodiverse, and they really want to see change happen as well. So one big positive we see is harnessing diversity ambassadors within the organization, and then using those ambassadors to support diverse talent as they come in. So they've got someone to, yeah, to kind of, yeah, answer any questions they have. Or there is a lot of kind of work cultural differences as well. So, you know, making that onboarding process easy and smooth and safe. There's a lot of talk around psychological safety now, and I think that's a huge part, is just making sure that, yeah, that everyone is treated as an individual, that they feel safe in a workplace.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important topic. I quite often will talk about the what I call the diversity paradox, which is working. We actually find it easy to work with people who are like us. You know, it's a natural, it's a human thing. We're tribal, right? And so people who are like us, we have this natural bias towards them, and that's a real problem in the hiring process. Um, it's harder to work with people who aren't like us, but far richer. There's far more potential. There's far more creativity and opportunity for us to see things that are completely unique and different, but it's a bit more challenging. And I think sometimes when diversity is either tokenistic, or when, for a bunch of reasons, a diverse person has to try and fit in to be in the job rather than to bring that unique skill, we sort of lose the beauty of that. Is that something you see, this diversity
Yeah,
challenge? People
massive.
don't know how
Like,
to.
and it does come down to that job design piece. So we do a lot of work around the job design. Is I don't know if you saw, there was an article recently in the Fin Review, and I'll send it so that you can put it in the show notes. And it's around this skills first hiring approach, where you're hiring for skills rather than experience and qualification. So it's looking at that potential. And Canva and Culture Amp and a couple of other organizations have used that approach. And by removing that kind of requirement for a degree, I met with the global head of talent for Accenture recently, and they've removed all MBAs from their degree, from their job descriptions worldwide, because they said we don't need there's no need to have, why do we have these, like why do we, there's a lot of these legacy kind of decisions that were made a long time ago, why do we have to do it that way? So I think if you're starting a job design from scratch, looking at, okay, we're going to recruit this role, let's just throw it all out or up in the air and say, what do we really require for this role? And what's the potential and what are the pathways? One of the things that a lot of organizations don't do is they don't look at where's the career pathway, that if we get someone with this potential, then where can they progress within the organization? Often it's just very siloed, just looking at that one job. So I think the job design is huge. I've heard some really good examples recently. One of our clients who advertises on our job board, they they work in the manufacturing industry, and they were hiring somebody for a forklift license. And so every time they'd advertise this role, it required a forklift license, which just pushed a lot of people out of that process. And then somebody said, well, why can't we bring them on board and shift some of the other team around so that we can then pay and support them to get that license, and then they can. And so it's just thinking differently, and that can be at all different levels. As a recruiter, I've always advocated for difference on shortlisting. Always had at least one or two left field candidates, and the amount of times I've had to go to bat with my corporate clients and just say, just think about this differently, and think about the potential and especially bringing diversity into teams. It's an absolute no-brainer. I do a lot of talking around the business case, and the stats are just, it's like, why is everyone not doing this? Because there's so many benefits of diverse teams. Yeah.
And I think it is also, having to think about, okay, how do we have to change as a team? This is something that I sort of, again, end up in conversations with people a lot around. They'll say, oh, well, we want a cultural fit. We need people who'll fit right in to what we have today. But like everything else in our organization, our culture needs to constantly evolve, and it will constantly evolve and change. And so the better question is, if we bring this person in, what are they going to add to the culture? How's the culture going to shift, and how are we going to be richer? And I think it's along with the job design, it's that sort of, what do I want my team to be with this person bringing in? What are they going to bring? Whether it's a loud voice or maybe a thoughtful, quiet voice, whether it's someone who's more analytical or more values driven, whatever the case might be, I think that's a really important factor.
Yeah, and I love that word rich, like that richness that individuals bring with difference is enormous. And in 5 years, the richness in my life from meeting people from different backgrounds is just phenomenal. Like I'm just so glad that I've gone on this journey from my own life, and to look at my group of friends now. I learn so much more, and all our coaches who do the coaching say to me, that they get way more out of it than they do for the individual. And I think that's where we started down this coaching path, and um, after supporting 1,600 refugees and migrants, we realized that, okay, the issue is not with these amazing individuals. The issue is with the systems and, as you say, those cultures and the biases that really, corporates need to really think about how they're hiring. And it's great because we've found some amazing ambassadors and talent teams and HR teams, and there is a real desire to shift. But it's just about starting and that action. So I think there's been enough talking about it. And for us, it's like, let's get companies to really start doing this, and we can help and guide them and show them how to do it. And yeah, the richness is huge for all parties involved. And it's also got that we're doing a lot more now around that kind of CSR and ESG, like how can using volunteer days. So with our coaching, we're just onboarding 12 new coaches tomorrow, and they're going to be using their volunteer hours to coach refugees and migrants, and the richness that it brings to them to change their perception. And like me, many of them have never met a refugee or spent time one-on-one, and it just really gives them that, kind of opens their eyes, and also to understand the challenges that others face when often they have had successful careers in their own country, and through no fault of their own, they've had to flee. So I think when you realize actually it could be anyone that could be any one of us in that situation, it's that kind of then desire to, how can we support and yeah.
It is such an important thing to do. I think we're bombarded with so much media, social media, so much information. So we sort of have this misconception that we understand the way the world is. And it's only, I find, with things like travel, things like engaging with people who are very different from ourselves, that we realize we know nothing. And I think when we realize we know nothing, we feel a bit uncomfortable, but we should actually feel empowered, because it's such a great place to be open to learning and bringing new things in.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's really exciting. We had two Japanese 14-year-old boys stay with us recently for 5 nights, and it was they didn't speak very much English, but we just had my kids, it was just the best fun. It was the best thing that we've done. It was just bringing them into our home, and they wanted to go and see kangaroos, and we took them and see wallabies, and just the awe and wonder in their face, like from living in the city in Tokyo to coming to Australia and seeing the lifestyle, going to school here. And they really had very little English, but we were able to find ways to communicate and to learn. And they were so excited to show us some of their origami and the things that they do in Japan and teach us some of the language. And it was just a beautiful experience. I think, yeah, if we can, we just get so caught up in our day to day and busyness, and it's trying to find those experiences that are going to make us think differently and more broadly, and which is very fulfilling for us as an individual. I think it's just trying to be curious and explore, and yeah, you're going to get back in spades what you what you put into that experience.
can see that you light up whenever you talk about these experiences. You know, it's obviously something that has sort of impacted you and shaped you. Do you think that are there some underlying values you've had that sort of led you to find this path, or has this really sort of have there been more of those sidestep moments where you've changed dramatically? What are those underlying values you think that are driving what you do now? Where do they come from?
Yeah, I think my dad was a school principal and my mom was a nurse. So we came up with very community values, Irish values. I think were instilled from a very young age around that kind of service to others and helping. I have learned how to put some boundaries around that too, I think. And yeah, I think it's just I think working in recruitment, I've always had such a desire to see people succeed in their career. Like that's been a real passion and drive of mine. And I've always been really curious. And I grew up, my parents had a bookshop when we grew up, so I worked in the bookshops as well. They were quite entrepreneurial, and all my siblings now actually have their own business. We're all quite entrepreneurs. So I've always liked that idea of, coming up with something new and trying it. And I didn't think 5 years ago that, yeah, a few months ago, I won a Women Changing the World Award in London, and it was presented by the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson. And I think for me, that was a real moment for me to go, wow, like I really am living my values. And I never thought I would be someone that would change the world. I didn't ever think that was possible for me. So I think it's yeah, just reflecting that as one person you can make a difference, but you've got to be brave and you've got to jump in and you've got to try new things. And yeah, I think all of those values have really driven me to, yeah, to kind of where I am now.
Wonderful. Look, I'd love to ask you some of my empathy card questions. So these
Yeah.
are just little questions that we often take to conferences and events, and maybe be useful in your context as well, just to help people ask different questions and open up a little. The first one, describe a time when you had to overcome a particular challenge at work.
Ooh. Um, God, where do I start? I think. Yeah, I think mindset, like talking to hiring managers and talent managers, like and this has happened a number of times, is um yeah, just try to change that thinking of, oh no, that's we can't do that, we're not ready. I think that's a big one, is trying to get people to really come on board with embracing and just starting. So yeah, that's probably been one of the biggest challenges for us, is there's an intention that organizations want to do this, but there's a lot of excuses as to why they can't. So yeah, that's probably.
Can I dig in that a little bit, because it's a really important, I guess, issue. Often people will say things like, "Oh, the company wants to, the organization believes," and my retort is always, "Companies don't believe anything. Companies don't do anything. People inside companies do things, and so it's a people problem when we have that sort of oh, we're not ready. You know, again, they'll say we're not ready, and I take that as I'm not ready. But
Yeah.
how do you try and overcome that? Because there might be some people listening thinking that is a good idea, but maybe I don't feel ready or we're not ready. What would you say
Yeah.
to that
So
person?
we found that immersion has been really good. So some of those leaders have done our coach accreditation where they get to do one-on-one coaching with refugee and migrant. That's an amazing, phenomenal change for them. I've found through keynote speaking, as I mentioned, speaking alongside Yasser when he shares his story, there's just it plants a seed. It's like people are really curious then, and it really shifts their thinking. It's them to go. So I think storytelling is a really big one. And yeah, I think we've run a number of immersive projects. We did a project last year where we worked with refugee school kids in Western Sydney, and we actually brought them to Google for a day and got the Google staff involved. And those Google staff shared some of their personal journeys to their career pathway. And some of those stories were very vulnerable, and those kids walked away going, "Wow, I could work there. That's a possible path for me." But the staff also were really touched with the stories from the kids. So any of those immersive experiences, I find that creates quite a lot of change. So anytime that you can have stories or we work with a great guy called Cookie from Cuppa TV, and he shares a lot of different stories. And yeah, Yasser and I have been on his show as well. And I think, yeah, if you can get people to immerse in hearing and just planting those seeds, it's not going to happen overnight. But if you can get those diversity ambassadors within the organizations, we found that that's been the biggest shift. And some of the studies and statistics have showed that that is the greatest place for change. As you said, it's changing those, getting those individuals in the organization to start calling out and saying this, why are we not doing this? So we've now got over 200 ambassadors who are chipping away. And we're really excited this week. Actually, one of our coaches who works at Microsoft and one at Cisco are both in the finalists for the Women in ICT DEI Award. And part of that is with the work they've done for us volunteering. So yeah, it's really nice then to hear their stories and yeah, see that through that type of volunteering and work and changing mindset, yeah, change can happen and it's possible.
And that power of sharing stories, being curious, again, you know, asking that next question, being the one who really listens when they ask the question and leans in, I think is important. My next question, what's one thing you've always wanted to try but haven't yet, and why?
Wow. I've always wanted to yeah like fly a helicopter. And I've got a fear of heights. That's probably I have jumped out of a plane, done skydiving, but I haven't ever taken flying lessons.
Well, it could be on your list. A very good friend of mine, he did that not too long ago. Decided to get his helicopter license. So
Okay.
yeah, again, rich experience. You should jump in and give it a try. One final question, Yvonne. What's a song that really defines your childhood?
Oh wow. Um I think it's got to be a Christy Moore song. Um and it's called Wild Horses. Yeah. Yeah.
And why is that? What about that song sort
I
of comes?
think just growing up in Ireland, music is it was such a big part of our life. So yeah, lots of music, like traditional Irish music and live music and heaps of concerts. And yeah, so that was something that I was always excited to do when I was younger.
Wonderful. And look, I'm so, as I said, I'm so excited to talk to you. It's wonderful the work you do. It's not, as I said, this isn't about a tokenistic, how do we help the poor people who are migrants. It's actually tapping into this beautiful, rich diversity that we've got at our fingertips, but as you said, unseen. So thank you so much for the chat. It's been really wonderful.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll put all the in the show notes. I'll put links to your website and anything else that we can to connect, because I think if you're looking to hire people, or if you're thinking about how you can tap into this talent pool, this is clearly the best path forward. So thank you again, and it's been really great to chat.
Thank you so much.